How to get an apartment for newlyweds. Okay, you've made it. Now you want to graduate and move on, get to your love shack. But before you do that, you got to get some knowledge. So stay tuned. It's Mastermind Mondays, one of my favorite days of the entire week, and you're like, oh, I hate Mondays, but I love Mondays because Mondays are Mastermind Mondays and you're watching this video. And if you're back, thank you for coming back, welcome. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for joining. Check out what we have for you. So what we're gonna talk about today is how to get an apartment for newlyweds. And so what I want you to consider before you guys go and get an apartment, you gotta make sure that you always know how to get into a place that you know how to get out of. And you know what I'm talking about. It could be all good and you're like, oh, this is gonna be perfect. They're gonna be my loved one forever. We're gonna die together when we're old. And sometimes it just doesn't work out like that, like for 50% of the people who actually get divorced. And so I want you to consider all of this stuff because you can actually make your relationship work. You don't have to end in divorce. And most of the time people get divorced because they don't know how to share or some other like really simple stuff like pet peeves like, don't clean my toilet with your toothbrush, or don't clean my toilet with my toothbrush, or anybody's toothbrush for that matter. Why would you even clean somebody's toilet with a toothbrush? So you gotta set some ground rules. We're gonna talk through some ideas for you guys to get along. And so let's get into tip number one. So really important, first, okay, you got an apartment, or maybe you didn't get an apartment yet, but you're about to get an apartment. Your income and the other person's income, together, the two of you should be able to afford an apartment. If you can't afford an apartment together, you're not watching this video anymore. You gotta go get a job or a second job or a third job because you can't afford to rent an apartment. And so when you do, come on back and we'll watch this video. So right now, what we're gonna talk about is you two both have jobs and you can afford to move, which is great. Now that you have enough money to move, you got to figure out how are you guys going to pay the bills? Like, are you going to get a joint account? Are they going to be separate accounts? Are you going to have like money like being moved from different accounts to each person's account? Are you going to have some app that's going to be paying your utility bills and rent simultaneously synchronized through blockchain and cryptocurrency? So you got to figure out all of these things because you need to pay the bills, and money is a sensitive topic, which is one of the leading causes for divorce. Statistically speaking, you can look this up if you want to challenge me on this, but it's actually true. So figure that out, and then once you figure that out, then you're like, okay, well, we need electricity for lights and gas for heat potentially on the apartment. And then you'll also need to get a lease and then sign your name on all of that stuff. You gotta know who's gonna be cooking, who's going to be cleaning the dirty laundry. Maybe you want to you're the progressive types where you're like, women don't do that, men do that. Or you're the traditionalists, men don't do that, women do that. Or you're somewhere in between where you're like, oh, honey, we'll just share. I'll wash the underwear, you wash the socks, or whatever. But you need to figure out who's going to be washing what and doing what, because you don't want to have arguments about that and having incorrect expectations. So the expectations are going to be super important here, and you want to make sure that you have all of this documented because you don't want to have anybody with a slip of memory saying, I'm pretty sure you said you were going to cook every night, and then the other person's like, nope, that's not what we talked about, and then you have an argument and you have divorce. So keep it in writing. I really mean that. Keep it in writing, figure out who's going to be doing what, and then just have it on the refrigerator, and you can do little tick marks every week about who did what until you get into a rhythm, and then it's going to be undisputed, okay? But you got to start out with something where it's going to be easy enough for people to follow. So then the other thing, as far as you being newlyweds, you want to kind of like spread the cheer for your new building because that's going to be a good deal, because you want to create some good relationships with your neighbors, because eventually one day you'll need to like borrow sugar or a shotgun in case of a riot. I was kidding about that last one. But yeah, so you'll need to have just really good relationships in general. Those of you who are really social people, you're like, yeah, duh, of course you want to introduce yourself to neighbors. But those of you who are not social, that's a good time, and you can just meet people and then figure out who you like or don't like, and who's the most likely culprit to destroy your property or steal your wife or take your television. And so just factor all of that stuff in, and then just designate people as unsafe or safe. Okay? So the next step, you want to figure out location. One of you will need to commute further than the other person, more than likely. So you gotta kind of figure out who has the car, or if both of you have cars, who doesn't mind driving longer or taking commute by public transportation or whatever. So factoring in commute is going to be a pretty big deal for you. So just rationalize through that, and then just say, well, you're at point A and I'm point B. And then if we get an apartment right here, it's going to be really unfair. So if we get an apartment right here, then I'm also going to be pissed off. So we have to meet somewhere in the middle or further out or whatever. Yeah, but the idea is you want to find something that's kind of convenient to both people. So the other thing you want to consider is if this is point A and this is point B, and then you guys are like, hey, let's find a place in the middle. And then you're like, oh no, I don't want to be anywhere from here to here, even though it's close to your job, because this is the death zone. This is a high crime area. You're getting paid a lot because you're the warden of this prison, but I don't want our kids living over here. So we're going to be outside the perimeter, and your ass can drive all the way to work every day because that's the job you chose. So that's okay, because, safety is a big reason for people to consider like which apartments they want to take. And so you want to stay safe, and you want to live in pretty areas if you can afford them. So factor in safety, and there are statistic maps like Clear Map, and I mentioned this in almost all my videos. And I kind of feel like every municipality should have a statistical map. If they don't, you might want to complain and say, what's up? How come you don't have this? Yeah, so, just food for thought. Oh, speaking of food, next tip. Grocery stores, restaurants, fun places, amusement parks, zoos, what else? I don't know. What else do you like to do? I don't know. You want to go to movies? So you just want to pick an area where you guys can do stuff, and Google is really just a lifesaver for that because it really makes all that information so easy to find and accessible. But you want to make sure that you guys reserve time for fun outside of the apartment and be social and do fun stuff together and build communities. And so you want to consider the region that you're going to be moving to, because those are going to be important. The next tip is, what if you don't have a laundry machine in your building or in your unit? You have to take your dirty laundry with poo-poo streaks somewhere. And if you don't like that kind of thing and you don't want to travel too far, yeah, that could be a real pain, especially if you're, slogging through some snow or dirt. So ideally, you want to have a laundry machine in your unit. Otherwise, it'll be really uncomfortable to take your laundry somewhere, especially if you're wearing pajamas and you literally have nothing else clean. Then you have to walk to your next place in pajamas, and it's just so awkward. So the next tip is schools. You are probably at this point not having any kids if you're newlyweds, unless you got started earlier. But that kind of thing happens. It's okay. It's normal in this day and age. But still, like, if you are moving, you got to consider which schools you want to go to, because there are crappy schools and then there are good schools. And it just so happens that the crappy schools are in areas that are less expensive, and the good schools are in the areas that are more expensive, because those are economics. It's not a racial thing, it's a tax thing. The more taxes that are paid, the more money those schools can get. And if you're in a poor area, there are not enough people paying taxes, you're gonna have less money going to education, you're gonna have crappy schools, and pissed off teachers. You want to just pick really good areas, okay? Pick good areas with good schools, and if you have to move to a crappy area, make sure you have a plan to level up. So that was the last tip. I hope this was helpful. I have completed my memory dump for today for your enjoyment, and it has all been just made available for you to scroll through and save and take notes and get educated and do good stuff with your life and have a nice marriage. And if you don't have a nice marriage, it's not my fault. Just make sure that you see a counselor and a divorce attorney before there's a problem. This way you can have a real clean exit. Just some word of advice for real. Like, that's a good idea to do that. Unless you have a prenup, then it's all spelled out. Prenups are really good too. Okay, so anyway, if you found this useful, awesome. Go ahead and give us a like, a subscribe, and also hit the bell, because the next time we publish content, you'll be the first to know. And then also, please share this content. If you feel like this is a good thing for people to hear, you can pass us around to your friends by text message and Instagram and Facebook and, Twitter. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.